The dawn light had just begun to paint the jagged edges of the mesas and dusty Trail Valley, when the bold declaration rang out like a shotgun blast in the still morning air. Whispers traveled quicker than dust devils across the parched plains, carrying news that ignited curiosity and ambition in equal measure. A widow, known for her unyielding resolve and sharp tongue, had issued a dare that promised to expose the true Greater Lactariafan everyman, who claimed the title of cowboy. It was the kind of challenge that could make legends or break spirits, and in a land where survival hung on the thin thread of reputation, no one could ignore it. Her name was Eleanor Harrington, and she presided over one of the most prosperous ranches in the territory, a spread that stretched from the winding creeks to the rocky foothills. But it wasn't her land that drew the crowds, it was her prized possession, a massive bay stallion named Thunderbolt, standing at 18 hands, with a coat as dark as a moonless night and muscles that rippled like coiled springs. Thunderbolt was no ordinary horse. His eyes burned with an untamed fire, a spirit that had defied every attempt to bend it. 25 men had tried their hand at mastering him, coming from dusty cowtowns and bustling railheads, each armed with bravado and tools of the trade, only to leave humbled, bruised, or worse. Yet Eleanor wasn't seeking a conqueror. She yearned for a true partner, the sort her late husband, Elias, had been before tuberculosis claimed him for harsh winters ago, a man who grasped that true mastery came not from domination, but from mutual respect. Eleanor had loved Elias with a depth that echoed through the valleys long after his passing. He had been a rancher through and through, with hands calloused from years of honest labor and a heart attuned to the rhythms of the land. In his final days, weakened by the disease that ravaged his lungs, Elias had somehow mustered the strength to approach Thunderbolt. The stallion, wild and unpredictable, had allowed him to mount, and for a full 15 minutes, they had moved as one, a symphony of grace and understanding that left onlookers speechless. "This horse sees into a man's soul," Elias had whispered to Eleanor afterward, his voice frail but his eyes alight with wonder. "He's not meant to be broken. He's meant to choose his rider, someone who values freedom as much as he does." Those words haunted Eleanor in the lonely nights that followed. The ranch demanded endless work, fencing pastures, herding cattle, negotiating with suppliers who often tried to cheat a widow out of fair deals. She faced the subtle injustices of a man's world, bankers who questioned her competence, neighbors who offered help laced with ulterior motives, and the constant pressure to remarry for protection rather than love. But Eleanor refused to yield. Instead, she channeled her grief into a test that would honor Elias's memory and weed out the unworthy. On a crisp Monday at the bustling mercantile in the heart of town, with cowboys, farmers, and merchants all ears, she made her stand. "If you're a genuine cowboy," she proclaimed, her voice cutting through the chatter like a knife through hide, "then prove it on my stallion. Hold your seat for 10 minutes without hitting the dirt, and I'll hand you $60 in gold now to stake a claim or buy your own herd. But if you fail, slink away and never darken my gate again, pretending you're tougher than you are." $60 was a fortune in those parts, more than a year's wages for a trail hand. It could transform a drifter into a landowner, a dreamer into a doer. But the stakes were high, and the whispers soon turned to debates. Was Eleanor cruel, toying with men's egos for sport? Or was she justified, demanding proof in a world where words were cheap and actions spoke volumes? Some argued it was unfair to pit men against an unbeatable beast, highlighting the violence inherent in such spectacular broken bones, the humiliated pride. Others saw it as a necessary right, a reflection of the harsh realities of frontier life where only the resilient survived. These discussions simmered in saloons and around campfires, drawing more challengers and fueling the valley's gossip mill. The first wave arrived swiftly. Local lads who'd cut their teeth on gentle mares and plow horses, convinced their hometown bravado would suffice. Young Buck Thompson was the inaugural fool, a freckle-faced 20-year-old with more enthusiasm than sense. He swaggered into the corral at Harrington Ranch, rope in hand, boasting of his exploits on the cattle drives. Thunderbolt eyed him warily, his massive frame tense as a bowstring. Buck managed to throw a loop over the stallion's neck, but the moment he swung into the saddle, chaos erupted. Thunderbolt exploded upward, hooves slashing the air like sabers. then twisted midair with a ferocity that sent Buck tumbling into the fence posts. He lasted a mere 7 seconds, emerging with a split lip and a shattered ego. The crowd neighbors who'd gathered out of morbid curiosity roared with laughter. But Eleanor watched from her veranda, her arms crossed, face impassive as granite. Next came Harlan Jenkins, a grizzled veteran of the range wars, his face etched with scars from bar brawls and stampedes. He approached with a whip, believing fear would forge submission. "I've broken meaner broncs than this," he snarled, cracking the leather for effect. Thunderbolt's response was swift and merciless, a series of bucks that resembled a whirlwind, each jolt calculated to unseat. Harlan clung for 12 seconds before being launched skyward, landing in a heap that cracked her ribs. The town doc, old Doc Wilkins, patched him up, muttering about the folly of pride. "This ain't just a horse," Wilkins grumbled. "It's a lesson in humility." As days turned to weeks, the failures mounted, each one more spectacular than the last. The third challenger, a slick-talking gambler from Abilene named Silas Reed, tried bribery apples and soft words whispered like seduction. Thunderbolt sniffed the offering, then promptly reared, sending Silas sprawling into the mud. The fourth and fifth met similar fates, one with a dislocated shoulder, after a particularly vicious spin, the other nursing hoof marks on his thigh. By week's end, Doc Wilkins's office resembled a battlefield infirmary, filled with groans and regrets. Yet the debates intensified. Was Eleanor's challenge promoting unnecessary violence? Or was it a fair test of character in a brutal world? Some women in town sympathized with her, seeing it as a stand against the patriarchy that dismissed widows as helpless. Men, however, split. The old-timers respected her grit, while the young bucks called it emasculation. Word spread beyond Dusty Trail Valley, carried by stagecoaches and telegraph wires. Drifters from neighboring territories arrived, leather-tough men with tales of taming mustangs in the Badlands. One, a burly figure named Clyde Donovan, brought elaborate gear pulleys and straps meant to restrain. He lasted 3 minutes before Thunderbolt's raw power snapped the contraptions like twigs, hurling Clyde over the rail. The professionals followed, rodeo stars with championship buckles, horse whisperers with mystical claims. Each thought they held the key force, patience, gadgets, but Thunderbolt dismantled them all. A renowned trainer from Denver, Victor Lang, spent hours cooing and circling, building what he called rapport. He mounted with confidence, only for the Stallion to unleash a barrage of twists that ended in Victor's undignified splash into the water trough. Eleanor observed every attempt from her porch, her expression a mask of stoicism. Whispers grew. Was she deriving sadistic pleasure from the spectacles? Or was she clinging to Elias's memory, refusing to let go? The injustices she faced added layer suppliers shortchanging her deliveries, thinking a woman couldn't count. Sheriffs ignoring rustler threats because a husband would handle it. Her challenge became a symbol, sparking arguments about gender roles and power dynamics in the West. By the 15th challenger, a cocky youth named Leroy Vance with sun-bleached locks, the air hummed with tension. Leroy lasted 14 seconds, his flight into the dirt drawing gasps. The 20th was different, an elder cowboy, Amos Greer, scarred and silent, who waited patiently by the fence for an hour. Hope flickered as he mounted, but for minutes in, Thunderbolt's buck proved patience alone wasn't enough. After the 25th failure, a pompous rider in ornate spurs, who crashed spectacular Lith Valley buzzed with defeatist talk. That horse is demon-possessed, some claimed. Impossible, others agreed. But Eleanor knew better. She'd witnessed Elias's ride, a sacred dance of harmony. She waited, believing the right man existed, one who understood partnership over possession. Far from the ranch, in a weathered cabin tucked against the windswept ridges, a solitary figure named Samuel Whitaker nursed a flickering lantern flame. The air smelled of pine sap and solitude, a refuge for a man who'd seen too much of the world's cruelties. Samuel had heard the tales filtering along the trails, a widow's impossible stallion, a gold reward, broken men limping away. He wasn't drawn by the money. $60 could buy supplies, but not peace. No, it was the essence of the story that tugged at him, a test not of strength but of soul. Samuel had once been a different man, before the Civil War scarred his spirit. He'd fought in bloody battles, witnessing atrocities that shattered his faith in humanity. Returning home, he found his fiancée gone, lost to another amid the chaos. He drifted into ranch work, tending remote outposts for the Triple Cross spread, seeing folks only during supply runs. Cattle didn't judge, they didn't betray, but loneliness gnawed, and the stories of Thunderbolt stirred something dormant, a whisper that perhaps redemption lay in facing the untamed. As the fire crackled, Samuel pondered the debates he'd overheard in town, the violence of the challenge, the unfairness to both man and beast. Was it just to subject animals to such trials? Or did it mirror life's injustices, where the weak were trampled? He decided to ride out at dawn, not for glory, but to confront his own demons. Little did he know, this journey would intersect with Eleanor's in ways that would redefine them both. The morning broke clear and biting, frost glazing the sagebrush as Samuel saddled his trusty sorrel. Rusty, he packed sparse, jerky, a canteen, his bedroll. The trail wound through canyons and over rises, each mile bringing him closer to destiny. By noon, he crested a hill overlooking Dusty Trail Valley, smoke curling from distant chimneys. Then he heard a thunderous neigh of Thunderbolt, a challenge that resonated in his bones. The Harrington Ranch sprawled below, a testament to hard-won prosperity. Sturdy barns, fenced fields, a house with a wide porch. A crowd milled around the corral, another challenger in progress. Samuel hitched Rusty and joined the spectators' row, cowboys, curious townsfolk, all buzzing with anticipation. The current rider, a flashy type named Dirk Malone in silver-trimmed chaps, approached Thunderbolt with a lasso, exuding overconfidence. Thunderbolt stood like a monument to defiance, his bay coat absorbing the sun, eyes piercing. Dirk looped the rope, mounted, and the explosion followed, rears, spins, bucks that shook the earth. Dirk flew off in 30 seconds, crawling away defeated. The crowd dispersed, muttering, but Samuel's gaze locked on Eleanor on the pork strong, poised, her auburn hair tied back, dressed practical yet elegant. Her eyes, stormy gray, met his, weighing him in an instant. "Are you here to test yourself against my horse?" she called, her tone neutral but probing. Samuel tipped his hat. "Considering it, ma'am." "What set him apart?" she asked. Samuel pondered, then replied honestly, "Nothing special, ma'am. But I'm not here to conquer or boast, just to see if we can meet as equals." Something shifted in her ice curiosity, perhaps hope. As the sun dipped lower, the stage was set for a confrontation that would challenge not just bodies, but hearts and convictions. As the sun continued its descent, casting long shadows across the Harrington Ranch, Samuel Whitaker felt the weight of Eleanor's gaze like a physical force, pulling him toward a destiny he hadn't fully anticipated. The dispersing crowd left a hush in the air, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the restless stamping of Thunderbolt in the corral. Samuel knew this wasn't just about mounting a horse. It was a reckoning with his past, a bridge to whatever future might await if he could prove himself worthy. Eleanor descended the porch steps with measured grace, her practical boots stirring faint dust clouds, and approached him with the directness of someone who'd long ago dispensed with pleasantries. "What brings a line rider like you to my challenge, Mr. Whitaker?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with curiosity. Samuel met her eyes, those gray depths that seemed to hold the storms of the valley itself. "Stories travel far, ma'am. Heard about your stallion and what he represents, not just a ride, but a true test. Figured it was time I faced one." Eleanor's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but an acknowledgement. She glanced toward Thunderbolt, who paced the enclosure with an energy that bespoke untapped potential. "Many have come with fine words. Few leave with their dignity intact. But you carry yourself differently. No bluster, no tools of coercion. Tell me, have you lost much in this life?" The question pierced Samuel like an arrow, evoking memories of battlefields soaked in blood, comrades fallen to senseless violence, and the fiancé who'd vanished amid the war's chaos. He nodded slowly. "More than most, ma'am. War takes pieces you can't get back. But horses, they've always been honest with me. No lies, no betrayals." She studied him a moment longer, then gestured toward the corral. "The rules stand. 10 minutes in the saddle without tasting dirt, and the gold is yours. But this thunderbolt doesn't suffer fools. He demands respect, not conquest. Samuel tipped his hat again. Understood. But if it's all the same, I'd like to meet him on his terms first. The remaining spectators, sensing a shift in the air, regrouped along the fence rails, their murmurs building like a gathering storm. Debates reignited in hushed tones. Was this newcomer any different, or just another victim of hubris? One grizzled old-timer, leaning on a cane from his own past mishaps, grumbled, "Seen too many good men broken by pride. This widow's game reeks of cruelty turning sport into suffering." A younger cowboy countered, "Ain't cruelty if it's voluntary. Life's full of injustices, least this one's got a payoff." Samuel ignored the chatter, focusing on the massive bay stallion. Thunderbolt's coat gleamed under the fading light, his muscles taut, eyes locked on the intruder with an intelligence that bordered on uncanny. Samuel didn't vault the fence like the others. Instead, he leaned against it, arms draped casually, allowing the horse to approach if he chose. Minutes ticked by in tense silence, the crowd's impatience palpable. Thunderbolt snorted, tossing his head, but curiosity won out. He ambled closer, nostrils flaring to catch Samuel's scent. "You're no stranger to hard knocks, are you, boy?" Samuel murmured, his voice low and soothing, like a lullaby to the wind. "Men coming at you with whips and ropes, thinking they can own your spirit. But that's not me. I'm just a fella looking for a fair shake." From behind, Eleanor's voice carried softly. "My Elias spoke to him that way. Said animals hear the truth in your tone, even when you've forgotten it yourself." Samuel glanced back, noting the wistful tone. "What was he like, your husband, before the sickness?" "A man of the land," she replied, stepping nearer. "Broke horses without breaking them, showed them their potential. He believed the finest mounts choose their partners, not the other way around." Her words hung heavy, laced with the injustice of loss, a good man taken too soon by an uncaring disease, leaving her to battle a world that undervalued women in power. Thunderbolt edged closer, close enough for Samuel to extend a hand, palm up, no demands. The stallion hesitated, then blew warm breath over his fingers, a tentative bridge. The crowd gasped. This was unprecedented. Eleanor watched, her breath caught, as Samuel finally climbed the rail, entering the corral with deliberate slowness. Inside, the world narrowed to man and beast. Thunderbolt circled, assessing, while Samuel stood centered, unmoving. "They call you unbreakable," Samuel said conversationally. "But I reckon you're just selective. Tired of force, hungry for understanding." The stallion slowed, ears forward, as if pondering the words. Eleanor's call from the fence added depth. Elias once said, "The best horses aren't wild, they are waiting for the right voice." Samuel nodded, extending his hand again. Thunderbolt approached, halting mere feet away. The tension built, a high-wire act where one wrong move could shatter everything. "I'm afraid to," Samuel whispered. "Not of falling, but of failing again. But you're real, and maybe that's what I need." Thunderbolt stepped forward, allowing touch a gentle palm on his neck. The contact sent ripples through the onlookers. No violence, no struggle, just quiet acceptance. The mounting took time, each step a negotiation. Samuel fashioned a simple halter from available rope, placed his foot in the stirrup, and swung up. Thunderbolt stood still, then took a step. The crowd held collective breath as they walked the corral, harmony unfolding. Minutes passed 5, then 8. Thunderbolt transitioned to a trot, then canter, Samuel flowing with him like water over rocks. It wasn't domination, it was dance. The debates outside intensified. "This ain't right, where's the thrill without the fight?" One spectator argued, highlighting the bloodlust in such spectacles. Another defended, "Maybe it's about time we question the violence we cheer for. This here's just a sare-wording kindness over brutality." At 10 minutes, Eleanor announced it, but they continued to 15. Samuel dismounted, legs shaky from the profound connection. Thunderbolt nuzzled him, a seal of approval. "You did it," Eleanor said, entering the corral, her voice laced with awe. Like Elias' pure partnership, she offered the gold, but Samuel waved it off. Wasn't about the money. It was about finding ground to stand on. "What then?" she pressed. Samuel glanced at Thunderbolt, then her. "Maybe a place to belong." Eleanor, widowed and weary of solitary struggles. saw in him echoes of lost love. The ranch could use hands like yours. Fair pay, a cabin by the east field. But Thunderbolt's part of the deal and needs someone who gets him. Samuel agreed, feeling roots take hold. As night fell, the valley whispered of change. But deeper questions lingered. Had Eleanor's challenge perpetuated injustice by exploiting men's egos, or challenged societal norms of masculinity and power? The months blurred into a rhythm of ranch life. Samuel settled into the cabin, its windows framing views of Thunderbolt grazing peacefully. Work filled his days, repairing fences strained by winter winds, doctoring calves against predators, negotiating with traders who now respected the ranch's new dynamic. Eleanor and Samuel shared evenings on the porch, conversations evolving from practicalities to personal revelations. One twilight, as stars emerged, Eleanor confided, "I set this challenge not for amusement, but to honor Elias." But it drew out the worst in Semeviolence masked as valor. Samuel nodded. "Were taught me that. Men fighting for glory, leaving trails of injustice. Your test, it weeds that out." Their bond deepened, sparked by shared losses. A kiss under the moon sealed it, born of mutual respect. Proposals followed, a wedding in spring amid blooming wildflowers. Thunderbolt stood sentinel, rearing joyfully at their vows. Years passed in contentment. The ranch thrived, Thunderbolt siring a line of exceptional horses. Samuel trained them with patience, his methods sparking debates. Was nonviolent handling superior? Or did it soften the West's rugged spirit? 5 years on, a weary young rider named Ethan Caldwell arrived, seeking work. Eleanor and Samuel exchanged knowing glances, seeing their own pasts reflected. "We might have a spot," Eleanor said, extending the cycle of redemption. Yet, as the sun set, questions persisted. In a world rife with violence and unfairness, could one ranch's story inspire change, or was it an anomaly in an unforgiving land? As the golden hues of sunset faded into the deep indigo of night over Dusty Trail Valley, the persistent questions that had shadowed the Harrington Ranch for years refused to dissipate like the evening mist. Samuel Whitaker and Eleanor Harrington O. Whitaker, bound by vows and shared purpose, stood as beacons of a different way, their union a testament to partnership over domination. Yet, in a frontier still scarred by gunfights, land grabs, and the raw injustices of survival, their story raised eyebrows and ignited fireside debates. Could one couple's triumph over a wild stallion truly challenge the cycle of violence that defined the West, or was it merely a fleeting oasis in a desert of hardship? As the ranch prospered, drawing admirers and skeptics alike, the true test of their legacy would unfold not in quiet contentment, but in the storms that inevitably rolled in from the horizon. The arrival of Ethan Caldwell marked the beginning of a new chapter, one fraught with the echoes of past struggles. Ethan was a lanky 23-year-old with haunted eyes and a limp from a recent brawl. In a border town saloon, he'd ridden in on a sway-backed mare, his clothes threadbare, his story spilling out in halting bursts. Orphaned young, drifted into cattle-rustling crews where violence was currency. Escaped after a bloody ambush that left friends dead and his conscience heavier than lead. "I'm done with that life," he told Samuel and Eleanor, hat in hand, voice trembling. "Heard tales of your rancho you tamed Thunderbolt without breaking him. Figure maybe I could learn that too." Samuel saw himself in the young man, war-weary drifter seeking redemption. Eleanor, ever perceptive, noted the parallels to her own battles against societal biases that labeled widows as vulnerable. "Pray, works hard here," she warned, "but fair. No room for old habits. And remember, our ways challenge the norm. Some call it soft, others revolutionary." Ethan nodded eagerly, but the debates he sparked among the ranch hands were immediate and heated. Older cowboys grumbled about coddling horses and men alike, arguing that the West's violence shoot us over water rights. Lynchings of suspected thieves was necessary for order. Without a quick draw or a firm whip, one hand named Rufus argued over beans and coffee. "Chaos reigns. Look at the rustlers plaguing the southern spreads. Justice demands blood." Ethan, still raw from his past, countered quietly, "Blood just breeds more blood. Maybe understanding breaks the chain." As Ethan integrated, learning Samuel's methods with Thunderbolt's offspring, the ranch faced its first major trial. Rustlers, emboldened by a drought that thinned herds across the territory, targeted the Whitaker spread. One moonless night, gunshots cracked the silence, echoing off the mesas like thunder. Samuel bolted from bed, rifle in hand. Eleanor close behind with her own Winchester, a gift from Elias, symbolizing her refusal to be sidelined. They found Ethan in the south pasture, grappling with two masked intruders who'd cut the wire and were driving off prime steers. A scuffle ensued. One rustler fired wildly, grazing Ethan's arm. Samuel tackled him, fists flying in a brutal melee that left bruises and blood. Eleanor, from cover, winged the second with a precise shot, sending him fleeing into the darkness. The aftermath was a whirlwind of controversy. The sheriff arrived at dawn, praising the defense, but questioning the lack of fatalities. "Should have strung M up," he muttered, reflecting the era's vigilante justice. Town gossips divided. Some hailed the Whitakers as heroes. Others decried the restraint as weakness, arguing that sparing lives invited more raids. "Violence begets safety," a saloon patron bellowed during a heated debate. "Let 'em live, and they'll come back stronger." Eleanor, bandaging Ethan's wound, challenged this, or we show there's another path: law over lynching, mercy over murder. Injustices like these rustlers thrive on fear. We starve them with fairness. The incident bonded Ethan deeper to the ranch, but it also drew external threats. Word of the Whitakers' soft ways spread, attracting a notorious cattle baron named Harlan Voss from the neighboring county. Voss, a burly man with a reputation for ruthless land acquisitions, often through intimidation and hired gun, saw the prosperous ranch as prime expansion territory. He arrived unannounced one sweltering afternoon, flanked by a posse of hard-eyed riders, demanding Eleanor sell out. "A woman alone can't hold this spread," he sneered, ignoring Samuel's presence. "And your pet cowboy's parlor tricks with horses won't stop real men from taking what's due." The confrontation escalated into a tense standoff. Voss's men drew irons, fingers itching, while Samuel and Ethan stood firm, rifles at the ready but not raised. Eleanor stepped forward, voice steel. "This land's earned through sweat, not stolen by bullies. Leave now, or face the consequences." A shot rang out, not from Voss, but from one of his hot-headed hands, splintering a fence post. Chaos erupted. Samuel dove for cover, returning fire that shattered a lantern and set a hay bale ablaze. Ethan wrestled a rider to the ground in a flurry of punches and dust. Eleanor, cool under pressure, felled another with a knee shot, her aim deliberate to wound, not kill. The skirmish ended with Voss retreating, to men down and howling, but not before vowing revenge. "This ain't over. You'll pay for defying the natural order," he roared, galloping off. The valley buzzed with the news, debates raging in every corner. Was Voss the embodiment of injustice, agreed, cloaked in power, or a product of a system where only the violent prospered? Newspapers from the territorial capital picked up the story, some editorializing against frontier vigilantism, others defending it as self-preservation. "The Whitakers challenge our very foundations," one op-ed read. "Is mercy a virtue or a vice in lawless lands?" In the weeks that followed, the ranch fortified, extra hands hired, watches doubled, alliances forged with neighboring smallholders tired of Voss's tyranny. Ethan, healing from his graze, trained harder with the horses, finding solace in Thunderbolt's steadfast presence. The Stallion, now aging but still majestic, seemed to sense the turmoil, his neighs a rallying cry. Samuel and Eleanor shared quiet moments amid the tension, their love a anchor. "We've built more than a ranch," Samuel said one evening as they watched the stars. "A way of life that questions the old brutalities." But Voss struck back viciously. Under cover of a storm, his men torched the north barn, flames devouring hay and threatening the stables. Samuel and Ethan fought the blaze bucket by bucket, while Eleanor rode for help, her horse pounding through rain-slicked trails. Gunfire punctuated the night, ambushes from the shadows, bullets whizzing like angry hornets. Ethan took a slug to the shoulder, collapsing in agony. Samuel dragged him to safety, returning fire with grim precision, downing one attacker in a spray of blood that stained the mud red. The fire was contained, but at cost: lost feed, wounded pride, and Ethan's life hanging by a thread. Doc Wilkins arrived, extracting the bullet in a grueling surgery lit by lanterns. His hands steady despite the chaos. "Boy's lucky," he grunted. "But this violence, it's the West's curse. Injustices pile up till they explode." As Ethan recovered, feverish and reflective, he confessed his past fully, the rustling crews he'd run with, the lives lost in senseless feuds. "I thought strength meant fighting dirty," he whispered. "You showed me otherwise." The climax came at the annual cattle auction in town, a powder keg of rivalries. Voss appeared, boasting of his inevitable takeover, his posse intimidating bidders away from Whitaker stock. Tensions boiled over when Voss accused Samuel of horse theft, a baseless claim meant to incite. Fists flew in the dusty street, Samuel trading blows with Voss himself. A brutal exchange of hooks and uppercuts that left both bloodied, Ethan, still bandaged, tackling a gunman before he could draw Eleanor from the sidelines, shouting for reason amid the melee. The sheriff intervened, arrests threatened, but witness Sesmo ranchers inspired by the Whitakers testified to Voss's aggressions. A trial ensued, raw and riveting, with arguments echoing the valley's divides. Voss's lawyers painted him as a builder, justified in forceful expansion, while the prosecution highlighted injustices like coerced sales and ambushes. The jury, swayed by Eleanor's eloquent testimony, violence isn't strength. It's the coward's crutch, convicted Voss of arson and assault, sentencing him to hard labor. Victory was bittersweet, scars lingered, lives altered. But the ranch emerged stronger, its methods validated. Thunderbolt's line flourished, sold to ranchers adopting nonviolent training, sparking a subtle shift in practices. Ethan, fully healed, became foreman, marrying a local school teacher and starting a family, perpetuating the cycle of redemption. Decades rolled on. Samuel and Eleanor grew old together, their hair silvered, hands intertwined on the porch as grandchildren played with colts descended from Thunderbolt. The Stallion had passed peacefully in his pasture, buried under a cottonwood with honors. The West evolved railroads tamed the wilds. Laws curbed the laws, but the Whitakers' legacy endured, a reminder that partnership trumps domination, mercy outlasts might. In their twilight years, as Samuel recounted the tales to wide-eyed young ones, he emphasized the choices. We face violence not with more of it, but with resolve and fairness. Injustices abound, but so does the power to change. Eleanor nodded, her eyes still stormy but wise. True cowboys prove themselves not by breaking others, but by building together. And so, the story of the widow's challenge closed not in ambiguity, but in fulfillment, a home forged, a family thriving, a land slightly less harsh for their efforts. What do you think, dear reader? Share your thoughts in the comments below, especially on the themes of violence and injustice in life. Do you believe mercy can truly overcome brutality in a harsh world, or is force sometimes necessary? Take a stand and express your views. Would love to hear them.